With the NBA regular season coming to a close, the pinnacle of competitive basketball is upon us. The playoffs are just around the corner, and with it comes the most exciting time of the year for fans of the game. A champion will be crowned anew. Or, again. And with that anticipation comes the predictions and the hot takes. The conversation around who will ultimately lift the Larry O'Brien once it's all said and done is going to be the buzz around the league until we reach the end of the postseason. Some people might just point to their favorite team as having the best chance. Depending on who you support, that approach may be a little delusional, but any good sports fan will root for their squad no matter the odds. I respect it, but for the most part, predicting the eventual champion involves an unbiased approach, using stats, or the eye test, or both to determine the likelihood of a team winning it all. But predicting sports is hard. Stats on their own rarely tell the full story. Even when you bring in top analysts and advanced algorithms, the results still fall short more often than not. Not because they're bad, but because basketball is such a context-heavy thing. Of the potential 16 contenders in any given postseason, predicting the eventual champion means selecting the singular correct option. On the court, there's just too many factors to account for. Injuries, in-game adjustments, and spontaneous player regressions and surges all make it difficult to forecast the eventual outcome of the playoffs. But we can try. On screen right now is a collection of the last 25 champions in the NBA, along with some of their regular season metrics. I know it looks a little overwhelming, don't worry, I'll break it down. In the leftmost column, we have the year of the finals, and in the column next to it, the team that won the chip that year. To the right, we have the columns displaying that team's seed, their offensive rating, their defensive rating, and their overall net rating over the regular season. Offensive rating is simply the average number of points that team scores per 100 possessions. Defensive rating, the number of points the team gets scored on per 100 possessions, and net rating is the difference of the two. From this table, we can identify a few trends. Every recent championship team has been a top 3 seed in their conference and has a net rating that's in the top 8 of the league or better. Additionally, each team here has both an offensive and defensive rating in the top 10. In instances where either the offensive or defensive rating do not fall in the top 10, indicated in the orange cells, it's made up for with the complementary rating residing in the top 5. So we know based on champions of the past that a potential future champion will likely adhere to these cutoffs. But what do these cutoffs tell us about that team's chances compared to the competition? Looking at the top 3 seeds from each season over the last 10 years, when applying the parameters we established previously in offensive, defensive, and net rating, we narrow down the potential contenders by, well, not much. And it's no surprise, the best teams in the league also have the best advanced statistics. But does having better metrics than the competition provide any surefire indication of a team's championship hopes? Again, not really. Look at the Raptors and Bucks back in 2019. The Bucks have better advanced stats than the Raptors in every facet, and yet when these two teams faced off against each other in the playoffs, the Raptors won, the statistically inferior team. How? It's because of smaller factors like coaching adjustments and matchups. After going down 0-2 in the series, Raptors coach Nick Nurse was able to identify and exploit holes in the Bucks' offense, closing out on 3-point shooters and forcing the Bucks to play through Giannis's paint-oriented offense. We had the unfortunate task of having to score while being guarded by the league's premier defender in Kawhi Leonard. Safe to say, the Raptors made the right call in that series. Nuanced details like that make differentiating a team's chances solely by their stats quite inaccurate. So, where do we go from here? More stats. We need more data. We need a better picture of the game. But stats alone won't take us very far, as we've discussed, so we need a way to interpret that data and identify trends that point to a team's true odds of contention. We can do this with machine learning. And yes, I know, AI is everywhere, it's annoying, it can't do everything, but it can help us get a better sense of what aspects constitute a high likelihood to winning a championship. I've mentioned data, but what kind of data do we need? In order to accurately map a team's capabilities, experiences, and potential, we need to incorporate a few elements into our process. First, we need to accrue all of the team's regular season statistics, anything that gives us a better idea of how well the team did over the last 82 games. In addition to the previous metrics we talked about, we're also going to add in values like win percentage and advanced stats like SRS score, which essentially takes the team's average point differential and strength of schedule to estimate how strong they are compared to an average team. Secondly, we need to be able to quantify a team's level of playoff experience, since historically, that has been a major factor in determining postseason success. Teams who have been to the playoffs before already have the experience adjusting to the brightest stage in the sport. To do this, we can add up each player's prior postseason games played on a given roster and get the final value for that team. Third, we need to be able to measure the impact of the players that make up contending teams. an all-encompassing value that demonstrates their on-court impact, whether or not it shows up in the stat sheet. Typically, points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals are decent at demonstrating a player's offensive production, but they never really grasp defensive impact or other intangibles that just don't show up in the box score. For example, Herb Jones averages just under 2 steals per game, but so does Nikola Jokic. You would be hard-pressed to find a single person that believes Jokic is a better perimeter defender than Herb Jones, who is easily amongst the top 10 players in that category. However, their defensive stats seem to suggest otherwise. Even advanced defensive metrics have their limitations. You can't tell me there are 88 better defenders in the league right now than Herb Jones. So I had to branch out. Initially, I wanted to use player ratings from the game 2K, since it's an all-encompassing value that is pretty accurate at measuring how good a player is, but that's extremely dependent on the opinions of the game developers who, let's be real here, don't have a great track record when it comes to being accurate. So I kept researching and finally found VORB, which stands for Value Over Replacement. It's a bit complicated in terms of the calculation, but essentially it predicts how much a player contributes to the team's success compared to a typical bench-level replacement player, factoring in playing time and general impact on the court. Team success does have some influence on this stat, but it's a very accurate measure overall. So what we'll do is we'll get the top 9 player VORP ratings for every team's roster in order to statistically shape player capabilities. We're choosing the top 9 because most rotations in the playoffs hover around an 8 to 10 man skew. Accumulating this information for every team all the way back from 2014 to 2024 will allow us to train the eventual model on what trends lead to an NBA championship and give us a spread of the most likely teams to win it all in 2025. After doing all that, we get this. Training the model on the data we scraped, we can see that the most likely teams to win it all are the Cavs, Thunder, and Celtics, with the Celtics having the highest chance and a noticeable edge on the second most likely Oklahoma City Thunder. The inexperienced Rockets and the new-look Lakers crack the top 5. Interestingly, despite being the 3 seed out east, the Knicks have a worse chance of winning the chip than both the Bucks and Pacers, who are ranked lower than them in seeding. Now, is this model accurate? When training and testing it on the past 5 seasons, the predicted champion was correct 40% of the time, and was within the top 2 60% of the time. It's not perfect, but it's pretty damn good. So, utilizing that accuracy distribution, we can confidently assume that of the teams shown here, it's almost certain that the eventual champion will be one of these 3 teams, with the most likely one being the Celtics. And it makes sense. They have playoff experience and championship pedigree. Not only are they top 10 offensively and defensively, but they're top 5 in both categories. Furthermore, Boston has one of the most loaded two-way rosters in the whole NBA. Tatum is playing like a superstar. Brown has always been an excellent offensive complementary to him. White, Holiday, and Porzingis are all effective contributors on both ends of the floor, and the bench has developed even further with Peyton Pritchard's emergence as a lethal offensive force from the bench this season. Not only are they coming off a title, but they're even better than last time. The Celtics have the ultimate recipe for those coveted 16 playoff wins. So, does this mean you should go on DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever other shady gambling website of your preference and bet your life savings on Boston? No. Because like I said previously, predicting sports is hard. 2 years ago, JxmyHighroller made a video attempting to correctly predict the eventual champion of 2023. In that video, he didn't use a machine learning model in his prediction, but he did reference one titled, "I will predict the 2023 NBA champion using machine learning." In the article, author TheJK outlines his process in using a model to predict the eventual champion of 2023, demonstrating its 100% success rate in predicting the last 3 champions of 2020, 2021, and 2022. That's definitely more accurate than the model we came up with based on testing alone. The numbers look good, the track record looks great. I mean, this has to be a home run, right? Let's check the results. Well, that's awkward. Not only was the model wrong, but the actual winner of the 2023 playoffs, the Denver Nuggets, didn't even crack the top 3. None of the top 3 teams even made the finals. So does this mean the JK is dumb? That his process was garbage? The reality is, basketball is a game played by human beings, not data and spreadsheets. You can't accurately model heart, resilience, chemistry, or momentum. And honestly, I'm glad for that. Sports is art. Basketball is art. It's not just numbers on a page. There's no stat for Kobe's work ethic, LeBron's basketball IQ, Jokic's otherworldly vision, or the way Steph shreds defenses just by existing on the court. The Miami Heat making it to the finals as an 8 seed not too long ago is exactly why we love this game. Because anything can happen. Every team has talent, every matchup has nuance. We're here for the storylines, the grit, and the promise of honest competition, not guarantees. With that being said though, there are 15 teams in the playoffs right now with a common problem, and historical data says that problem is the Boston Celtics.